Welcome everyone to BigGunner81 Live, presented by Applied Arsenal Finishes, BAT Arms LLC at batarms.com. Eggleston Munitions, the range at 355, and of course the Tier 1 Training Corp. So welcome everybody to episode number, who knows what number it is, I have no idea, because I don't number these things. So we had a few different people that were going to be on the show tonight. And Ryan is actually not going to be with us because he is wiped out. Him and James are actually out at James Mason, who's with us tonight, was out at the VIR, which is the Virginia International Raceway, for the Three Gun Nation match this past weekend, which we'll get to in a minute. First, we're going to introduce everybody. First off, we got James Renteria. I'm going to mess it always. I always mess it up. Sorry, everybody.
It's good, man. It's all good.
So we got you in the house. We got you guys do the high-speed shooting stabilizer, which we have something we're going to talk about a little bit later. We got Larry with us, who is someone new. Has been doing three gun for a while and had worked for Brownells in the catalog business for a long time. And so he's going to talk with us tonight as well and hang out. So, hi, Larry. Thanks for coming with us, coming on here with us.
You're welcome.
It's good to see you, Larry. Haven't seen you in a while.
Yeah, it's been a bit. Thought I recognized the face.
And, of course, James Mason. So thank you for coming on, James. So let's kind of start off, I guess, a little bit about this past weekend, since it's kind of a hot topic of discussion with all the water and the storms and everything out there in at VAR.
Well, Three Gun Nationals happened, and we got up there. I got up there on Thursday night, and it actually took 11 hours to get from Atlanta to the North Carolina-Virginia border, just from all the evacuees coming in and through Atlanta. So that was a little omen of what was to come. And it was the location at VIR is about an hour and a half from the coast. So we were inland quite a bit. So luckily we didn't get the brunt of it. But on Friday, we started to get a bit of rain in, and it was a little bit miserable. And then Saturday, it was just starting to downpour, and it made it very difficult to really push all the different sponsors and all that, because the vendor row was just awash, basically. And about 3 o'clock or so, the road going out to the main area, so the match was split up on both sides of the track, and on the main area where you had most of the Shotgun National stages, you had a couple of the national stages, you had the Pro Series stage, and all the vendor areas. The road going out to there, they'd been working on for like 2 months, and they actually took asphalt from the track that they broke up to create really nice roads, but all the water from the raceway drained to one spot and started washing out the road going out there. So about 3 o'clock, they did an evac of that area, and it rose a lot faster than they expected. My car was actually one of the last ones out, and I barely got through, and it forced us to leave about 7 cars out there. And so we put as many people as we could find with keys. We put them up on the highest ground we could, and then we got out and finished up the day on the other side and made a plan. I think they dropped 3 stages to make it work, but I mean, literally, you had a situation room in there where up on a whiteboard you had a full spreadsheet of what squads had shot what, how to switch them and move them. So came out with a really solid plan for the morning. We actually took lights out to one stage so that they could come early and shoot to kind of catch up.
Oh, wow.
Left out for the night, came back on Sunday morning. And I got there early and went out, and that spot where it had washed out had gotten even bigger. It was hardly passable at that time by a big dually truck, but we got out there, and once we made the curve, we saw a lake. And everything that was on that side had been flooded out by one of the Dan River, went past its banks and just flooded everything, including about 7 or 8 cars that were stuck.
Which I was going to show this video clip too from he actually made the news with this story.
Yeah, I'll tell you how that happened here in a bit.
Sure, I'll just play it so everybody can kind of check this out. But in a second if I can get it to go. Probably can't hear it, but you know what? Let me fix that for you real quick here.
And it's been good for our business. Outside of one of the gas stations, I ran into two guys who were at VIR for the Three Gun Nation Shooting Nationals over the weekend. They said portions of the shooting range were turned into a lake when the nearby river came out of its banks.
We went back in on Sunday morning and found about 7 to 8 cars sitting in a lake.
This morning, the guys went back out to the track yet again to try to figure out what to do about the remaining car that was
Ryan Wiggins.
completely submerged and had to be left because there was no way to
That
tow it
was his
out.
rental car, correct?
About where the water line was, right here, the whole way across.
The guys spent hours using a tractor to pull cars out of the water over the weekend. Even so, they say the weekend was not a total loss.
Still got 250 shooters through, and we still had a great event, and that just really goes to the management, both at VIR and Three Gun Nation.
Work to repair the sinkhole on 58 is expected to take.
So I figured I'd show that clip off there just because that was pretty awesome. I mean, to see that you guys were on the news about it and everything.
Well, on Monday morning, Ryan and I went to go get something to eat. And if you haven't been to VIR, you know there's like nothing nearby. And so there's like 2 sandwich shops like 3 miles and 5 miles away, and they weren't open yet. So we went to a gas station. I think Ryan had beanie weenies and chips, and I think I had Vienna sausages and a honey bun. You know, good breakfast. And as we pulled up, we saw the guy's news truck, and we went in, and he was getting ready to interview that lady Barbara, who's actually locally is a legend. Like, she's been there forever, and everybody knows her. And as we're going out, the media marketing side of me said, "Hey, I got a story for you." So I approached him, got on camera, and then I said, "Well, if you got nothing to do, why don't you follow me back to VIR?" So we did. We got back to VIR and did the other segment. It was just, I figured, a fun way to locally plug this 3GN.
Yeah, absolutely. A good way to get the word out about 3GN Nation, for sure.
Yeah. So on Sunday, when we went in there, we borrowed VIR's tractor and went in with tow straps and pulled people out. A few cars were lucky enough to have not gotten the water inside them, but a lot of them were, including Ryan's. Ryan's was the worst. And we actually couldn't get his out because the rental car company takes this little dongle that screws into the back frame. They took it out.
Oh, wow.
And we actually went out and found another Mazda rental, hoping that it would be the same threads, and they'd taken it out of that one too. So there was nothing to hook onto, so we couldn't get them out.
I got you.
But
That sucks. So, by the way, we've got some people out there on YouTube commenting and asking some questions. One of the first questions that popped up is F1 AR-15 good rifles? Yeah, of course. The F1 makes some nice stuff. I have an F1 upper and lower receiver set. There's a lot of great companies out there. You know, and when it comes to AR-15s, you know, actually I'm doing the project with the 50 states of AR-15, which we'll discuss in a little bit. The second question was, and this is something we can discuss too, was regarding triggers for the AR-15. And he said, what's a good duty/competition trigger? And also asked if, is the Hyperfire 24C too light for a home defense trigger? So what do you guys think on that question?
Well,
Larry?
I'll go. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Larry.
I really like, I've got a CMC, an American Gold, and a Geisley. And I really like the Geisley, but the reset and everything is completely different on all of them. The Geisley resets sort of feels like if you in the handgun world, the Geisley resets like a Glock. The AR Gold resets like a 1911. So if you're using reset, you know, when you're shooting long range targets and you've got a little time, which you don't generally in 3-gun, but the Geisley is nice for that.
Okay. So would you use a competition trigger in a duty or a carry style rifle, like one you're going to use for home defense or defensive purposes?
I still want to be able to hit my target. So if you've shot the gun a lot and you know what the trigger feels like, I'd use my competition gun if that was the case. I use my coyote gun. My coyote gun sits in the closet during the off season. So
Well, what I always hear, or one of the things, the common things I hear when it regards to using competition parts on a carry or defensive type rifle is basically like, well, now you're giving, if you have to use it for that purpose, and you have to go to trial over it, the question of, oh, well, you're making it, you're enhancing the ability of that firearm to make it more deadly or whatever it is,
Yeah.
We know that's not the case necessarily, but that's one of the things that comes up. So what do you guys think? What do you think about that question?
I think that's been debunked because you got to look at things from the most common level. A firearm is a firearm, and you can argue that having a better trigger makes it more accurate so you don't miss. The speed at which you pull the trigger, I mean, if you're in a panic mode, you're going to pull it as fast as it'll go. So I don't necessarily think that that's an issue. What ends up happening when you put, like skulls and, that the one law enforcement officer had a kind
like
of
the
a what's that
Punisher
phrase?
logo?
Yeah. And that's more, it's just opinion. It doesn't change any actual function of the firearm.
Right.
And
But
the
it
only
might change
problem-
what the jury thinks.
Well, but see, that's what it is. It's all perception,
Right.
If you've only got one rifle and it's your competition rifle and you put all your money into it, you didn't build it to go hurt people. You built it to shoot competition. As far as the triggers, I got the CMC straight trigger, and I pretty much use that for everything. And it's actually in the rifle that stays out at night. So that would be, it's not super high end. It's not super low end. It's nice. I shoot with it. I'm used to it. Like Larry said, and it works really well.
Good point. James, what do you think about that one?
Well, I think you build each machine for what it's for. And in a defensive situation, I want every advantage. And I'm not really worried about a jury because before we hit the jury, I got to take care of the person that I'm taking care of. So whatever's to my advantage is absolutely just fine. Now, personally, I'm very, very conscientious of accidental discharges. I've seen many cases with ultralight triggers in holsters on pistols that go off and shoot the guy in the knee or the foot or the shin. I personally like the, I don't know what the official classification is, but in the armorer's course, we learned it as the New York trigger for the Glock. It's like 7 pounds.
Okay.
And I personally like it because I have a deep-seated fear of shooting my leg, and I can pull that trigger just fine. And I want to make sure that when I pull that trigger, it's with full intent to apply deadly force. So personally, that's what I like. But if something's better for you, and if your competition gun is what you're used to shooting, and that's what you're going to be most comfortable with when you need it for other purposes, by all means, screw the jury.
Good point. So one of the things that our viewer just mentioned, fully loaded outdoors, basically about having, if you're in a defensive situation, you may want a longer trigger pull so you don't accidentally pull the trigger. Like, to give you a little bit of leeway, I guess, between, touching the trigger and it going bang, I guess. And I don't know about that one. I do understand the purpose. Like, I've had a discussion with one of our friends who's been on the show before, Thomas, and he mentioned about, he wants to use a combat trigger in his AR that he uses for everything because he wants to make sure that when he pulls the trigger that he meant to pull it. It wasn't like he just bumped it and went off. Having said that, the other question earlier he mentioned too about the 24C, the Hyperfire, being too light for a carry rifle. I don't know. I haven't. Honestly, I speaking of which, I have the Minnesota rifle right next to me. We're going to talk about that too. And that happens to have the Hyperfire Eclipse, which is very similar to the 24C. It's a little bit improved over it. And that one, the trigger pull is really nice. But is it way too light? I don't think so. I don't think it is really way too light in a sense. And now there's so many triggers out there too. That's the other thing. You mentioned the Geisley earlier. And there's a lot of variations even within that company too of what they offer for their trigger. So it's not just one trigger. I think my opinion would be it comes down to what you're comfortable with and what feels good for you. honestly, I think it's the best way to answer that question when it comes to combat duty trigger, because triggers are like, it's that link between you and your rifle. Kind of like your grip is in a sense too, where it's what you're actually using to fire it. And it really has to fit your, how fit you, you and your trigger finger, so asking other people, I guess, what they think, it's good for opinion and gives good food for thought, but ultimately you got to kind of try a few different triggers and see which one, seems to work best for you, and decide at that point, do you feel comfortable carrying it with how you have it set up in that respect? It is kind of a tough question and kind of full of a lot of opinions. So, go ahead.
If I may.
Sure.
I read it on one of the numerous millions of memes online, but instead of investing in, $500 triggers and, $2,000 rifles, get a $700 rifle and invest in $2,000 worth of training. Because I keep hearing a constant thing, finger on the trigger, finger on the trigger, finger on the trigger. If you're in a defensive situation, by the very definition of defensive, if it's time to go to lethal force, then, there's no question about it. So walking around with your finger on a trigger in your house is already a bad idea.
Right. Spend some money.
Yeah.
Instead of spending money on all types of triggers and stuff and equipment, kind of get dialed in with what you want and spend the money on ammo and training and practicing.
Yeah, because you go to a basic carbine class even, and nowadays you have such a plethora of people that have had to shoot under dynamic, stressful situations, and you pick their brains and you run through the drills. And you actually, develop that correlation between, sight, target, trigger, and it's not trigger first. Mm-hmm. So it's just, my take on that. I know a lot of people have said it, but, the trigger in a rifle is only to a short extent. At those distances, ain't gonna matter.
Which, speaking of triggers too, again, we've got our Reaper Solutions out there. One of Ryan Wiggins' sponsors actually watching. Mentioned that they like Elfman triggers, Elfman Tactical, which you're going to see their trigger also coming up in the Arizona rifle build as well. And they make a really nice trigger, no doubt about it. That design's pretty cool. It's got some bearings built into it, lifetime warranty, a skeletonized look to it, very lightweight trigger, very high quality trigger. And again, I'm not trying to compare apples to oranges and things like that when it comes to stuff. There's so many great companies out there that make really great products. Speaking of which, kind of
someone this weekend that was pretty awesome, actually.
What's that?
So it's a prototype right now that Tommy debuted for Timney.
Okay.
And right now I'm just calling it the Robo Trigger because there's really no name on it yet. But you have, I wish I had one just to show you, but there's quite a few pieces. But you've got rear to front throw, diagonal pivot off that, and then you also have a finger nodule that adjusts this way. So it's like 3 axes of movement within 3 axes of movement within your trigger guard.
Wow,
that's
pretty weird.
Intense. Yeah.
Make the gun fit you.
Yeah, like you said, designed to like fit you. You can customize it.
Yeah, it totally looks like a Robo Trigger. Like
that's pretty cool.
I wish I had a picture, but it's he showed it around, and once he pulled that thing out, people just bad word, but people flooded.
Yeah, no pun intended, right?
Yeah.
So that's cool. We're gonna see a lot of cool stuff coming up, I think, at SHOT Show this year, as always, too. Especially when it comes to that. So in my hands here, hasn't been test fired yet, but is assembled, and there will be videos coming very soon. The Minnesota rifle. Just to give everybody a rundown too about some of the stuff on this one. We've got, starting out the front, we got the TACOM ultra lightweight compensator, which is also adjustable. It's got some little set screws in the top there that you can remove and play with to adjust the just your account level of compensation, I guess the way to put it. Also got a U.S. Arms, formerly was Dayton machined from their OE side. Barrel, 16-inch barrel, chambered in 223 Wild, and then a JP Enterprise handguard. And can't see it underneath here very well, but there is a JP Enterprises adjustable gas block. Also running the Obsidian Arms upper and lower billet receiver here that's anodized in blue. Ryan, I'd call it Ryan Wiggins blue. Also can see the JP Enterprises ambidextrous safety selector and the Hyperfire ECL trigger, and also the new Hyperfire Hyper Grip, which is I don't think even available to purchase just quite yet. I think they have 2 versions of it coming out very soon, so that's kind of cool. Something you kind of see here kind of first. Then we also got the Luth AR stock on the back here. That's kind of a quick rundown. One of the really, really cool things about this rifle, I'm going to pull this out. You can kind of see, maybe see it. Bring it up close, see if it autofocuses. It's got the JP Enterprises low mass aluminum bolt carrier group. Yes, aluminum with titanium firing pin. It's amazing how light that firing pin is compared to the regular steel firing pin. When you have two in your hand, you can really just tell the difference. You know, it's pretty cool, amazing. So I'm looking forward to testing this rifle out and tuning it. I don't have an optic for it yet. I might just throw a Bushnell TRS-25 for testing purposes on there, take it out to the range, and start working on adjusting the gas block, which I also didn't mention. You can't see it, but inside there is the TACOM ultra lightweight buffer system, which basically is in replacement of the typical aluminum style buffer with the weights inside of it. This one is 2 Delrin, I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, Delrin pieces that are machined out almost like half the size of the, or I'm sorry, half the length of the buffer tube, or buffer, I'm sorry, not buffer tube, half the length of the buffer. And one half of this goes in the, all the way at the back of the buffer tube, and one goes at the front. And it just reduces the buffer weight. So with this particular setup, having a low mass bolt carrier group and the low mass or lightweight or ultra lightweight buffer system, we definitely had to run a gas adjustable gas block on it. And in this case, we're actually running a carbine gas system, which, you know, it's going to be an experimental type thing to try out and see how it's going to work. I mean, how much gas I got to give it and adjust it to tune it just right. You know, according to TACOM, I didn't read. I'll say this: I didn't read the directions right away. Who has done that? But I went to Tim, owner of TACOM, who I also have an interview on this channel too with for the project for 50 states of AR-15. Said, hey Tim, will this ultra lightweight setup for the buffer system work with the low mass bolt carrier group? Is that gonna be too little weight? And he said, no, it'll work with it. And then sure enough, I'm going to put it in the rifle, and then I look at the instructions as I'm getting ready to put it together, and he specifically mentions the JP Enterprises low mass bolt carrier group in there. So I'm like, oh, cool, sweet. So he already kind of had that thought out. So it's gonna be an interesting rifle to test, and I'm looking forward to it, and also looking forward to the other rifles coming down the line. After the Minnesota rifle, we've got the Massachusetts, which is already built as well, and that's probably the next one I start doing some videos on and testing with and everything. One of the things though on that one we're waiting on is it's a 6mm Hager. The barrel is chambered in 6mm Hager, and it's kind of an oddball caliber, which you may never have heard of, and it's more or less like a high power type shooting, and it's not available to purchase anywhere. You have to basically make your own. So right now I have the die set from Hornady on back order, waiting on that to come in so I can load up some rounds. Got some brass for it already, and to test that one out. So I'm looking forward to it. Then we got a couple others that we have some parts for that we're kind of getting close on as well. Arizona is one of them. But it's been a fun project, not just the building the rifles, but going around and sharing the stories of the companies and the people behind the products. That's been a lot of fun to get to know everybody. Now to kind of switch things up a little bit, but still kind of on topic. One of the questions we had from our viewers was thinking of doing a 1:6x24 versus a red dot. What's your opinion? Well, I guess there really would be a counter to that, and you guys can chime in on this too. A 1:6x, you know, that seems to be more for something you'd probably want to use for like competition maybe, or I don't know. I don't really hunt, so I don't know what's a good recommended scope for hunting and so forth. It depends on what you're hunting, I guess. Versus a red dot. Well, red dot's just going to be a red dot with no, you know, magnification. So I don't really know that there's a clear answer for that. I guess it depends on what you use it for. What do you guys think?
I shoot a red dot in competition because I have a hard time getting on the scope, getting the eye relief right on the scope. I don't have a neck and other things, so it's hard for me to consistently get on the scope. in the odd positions you get into in 3-gun. But
Okay.
with red dot, you know, you're shooting in a different class. You're not shooting in the same class as the scope people. And so I shoot it there, and I usually get compliments on, you know, my long range shooting with it, but I shoot it a lot. And that's the thing with the red dot. You don't have any holdover lines in the middle of it or anything like that to work with.
Right. So it's a guesstimation.
It's just, you know, it's an X or a dot or whatever you have, or the, you know, it's just, you know, what I use is a JP. They've got a little bitty, the J point with a 1 minute dot and a 65-minute circle, and it works fine for me. But, you know, I shoot that gun a lot, so I know where I have to hold to hit something at 300 yards with it, or I'm 400.
That's a good point. You know, and that's something I can relate to that. When I first started into the competition shooting, I started in doing practical rifle because that's, you know, there's a couple other little matches and things they did too with pistols and stuff around our area. But at that time we didn't have 3-gun at our club, and I was new to all this stuff. And I had a Colt LE6920. I still have it. It's one of my favorite rifles. And I started out shooting with that with the iron sights. And then after that, I progressed into another rifle that I put together, actually an R-Guns rifle, and I threw a Bushnell TRS-25 on it. And at these practical rifle matches, there'd be a couple, it's basically a once-a-month type thing with 3 stages set up, and 2 of them are kind of like a short-distance stage, and 1 of them is a long-range stage. And I think the shots in the long range were out to about 200 yards roughly, if I remember right. And, you know, I remember the first time really working with the red dot and being like, wow, good luck trying to hit stuff with the red dot at that distance. And then I started doing it, and I'm like, you know, I'm actually able to hit stuff at 200 yards with the red dot. That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
So,
you can. It's just a matter of knowing your rifle.
Yeah.
And getting a good solid position.
Right. And kind of guessing on from the diameter of your scope, maybe, like, you know, through what you're looking at through your glass and that size of that dot, about how much movement you have to have roughly between hitting a target. Of course, we're not usually, at least in my experience, we're not trying to hit small, little, tiny targets at 200 yards. We're hitting like a silhouette target or something that's, you know, I don't know, 2 feet tall maybe, or a little less than that. You know, typically they're a little bit larger targets, not the little tiny ones. So you kind of have a little bit of room to play with, I guess, in a sense. I don't know if either one of the Jameses want to add anything to that.
Well, I can say this, moving from vehicles and shooting, the red dots are, you know, they're practical. They work in all kinds of situations. EOTech, back before they went to L3, I still have my original EOTechs, and, you know, they're going on 10 years old with no problems. But having that bracket with your crosshairs, when you learn what your lead is on each of those points, you know, they're real quick. So 300 yard, you know, is it a standard little metal plates? You know, you can ding them all day once you get it set up. The 1 to 4 powers or 1 to 6 powers, it just cuts that time or the amount of rounds that you might have to use to get that hit. But they have their limitations. So I agree with Larry. It just depends on what you're using it for.
Okay. What about you, James Mason?
Well, I never get to shoot competition, but everything that I focus on is in a self-defense situation, and I'm all about things being light and simple. You know, the less stuff I got to think about, the better. Really big fan of red dot because everything for that application is going to be close. Larry's talking about being able to shoot long with the red dot. I've tried that, and I'm horrible at it. But on my gun, so I don't really know him like he did. But I'll tell you what, there was a product about 3-4 years ago that Steve Lockwood turned me on to. And I saw it at the media day, last one I ever went to, and it was shotgun red dot sight. Red ring, that's what it was called. And instead of going off just the dot, you actually had this ring, and I suck at skeet, horrible. But with that, I was hitting them almost 100%. And I guess that says enough about how good it is. So I do like it for that application. But long range, I've had no luck. Oh, look, there's one.
Well, this is a Seymour, and this is about as simple a red dot as you can get. They're very reliable, nice, easy setup, and you have such a great field of view that there's nothing to it. But this one's taken probably about 3 years old, taking a lot of beating, and it works really well. So this would be something that I would think would be more defensive. Okay.
Yeah, for sure. And I like that everything is smaller, you know. I don't want to have to worry about a big clunky optic if I'm moving around stuff. I want everything as tight and small as possible.
Good point. You know, and that's something to consider too, the extra weight too, not just the size of it and the extra, like I said, the clunkiness of it. Because I noticed that when I went over to my first scope, which actually brings something up that we were just talking about in the that was just mentioned in the live chat here. They asked about, you know, the Vortex Strike Eagle. I can't speak. That they were thinking about the Vortex Strike Eagle. It's a nice optic. I think for the money, it's not a bad choice. I have one on my competition rifle, but I switched over from using a Bushnell TRS-25 red dot over to the Strike Eagle, and that was one of the things I noticed right away was the as James said, kind of like the clunkiness, the extra stuff there. You got to still play with the adjustment to get the eye relief set. I sometimes struggle with that a little bit with the eye relief with that. And there's some scopes that are, well, there's a lot of different scopes out there, but there's some that I would say, I don't want to use the term better, but are just different. They're different. Like the eye relief situation may not be as critical on some of the other options that are out there. It just kind of depends. And everybody's eyes are different too. So, you know, what I think looks awesome might not look awesome to someone else, you know, that kind of stuff. But, you know, the Strike Eagle is not a bad option to use. I like it still. Like I said, mainly for like the longer range portion of the game. Just recently, we were doing you might have heard on the show before about the 2-gun run at the range at 35 that we did a few weeks back. And I kind of wish I had the Bushnell TRS-25 there. And I'll say this because when you want to talk about short range type stuff, that was pretty short because we're working on a 25 yard range. And then we're also working at maybe like, you know, 75% at most of that distance because we're on the other side of the lanes or the booths or whatever, doing the stages indoors, and using the Strike Eagle on that kind of a short distance, especially on a V drill. Like you may have seen the video for that. If you haven't, you can check out the 2-gun run video a couple weeks back. Switching from right to left or left to right, zigzagging down the way. I lost my count with it because I just lost my count. But really, I probably would have had a better chance at not screwing up my count had I had the red dot. Probably kept both eyes, you know, focused better. Because when you're looking through the scope and you have it slightly magnified, it throws, at least in my opinion, it throws you off a little bit. So I kind of tend to close one eye when I'm doing that. With the red dot, I might have left them both open and just been able to kind of like just keep that focus a little bit better. I don't know. Again, I didn't try it, so I can't say with 100% certainty, but I kind of would have thought that the red dot probably would have done a much better job for the short distance type course, so that was. Yeah, there's a lot of great options for optics out there, you know, and Strike Eagle is not a bad one to go with. So
another thing that they have on those, there's a bunch of them that do it. I don't know about the Strike Eagle, but you have the illuminated reticle.
Strike Eagle does.
Yeah. So if it's back down to 1 power, you obviously got to practice with it. But, you know, if it's bright enough, your eye's going to pick it up. It may not be as, you know, as simple and clear as a basic red dot, but, you know, it's a problem when you have a sight that's trying to do 3 or 4 things at one time. Right.
You know, and that's something to consider too. Like when I was running the Strike Eagle indoors, I didn't have the illumination on it. I find that I rarely ever use the illumination on it. I don't have much need to, I don't think, because you can see the reticle pretty well. At least I can see the reticle pretty well, and all that good stuff. But it's nice to have it as an option if you want to play with it. Maybe I just need to try using the illumination a little more often. And by the way, one of our comments on this is, love the channel, keep the good work. Thank you. I appreciate that. You know, it takes a lot of work to keep this stuff going. And that's why sometimes we kind of throw our show together at last minute on a Tuesday because, you know, it's just there's so much other stuff going on with this channel too and the growth of it. It does take a lot of planning, a lot of work, a lot of video editing, a lot of filming, stuff like that to keep producing videos. and it does actually kind of cost me money sometimes too to do it. But I love doing it. So I'm glad that you guys love watching the videos out there. So I appreciate that feedback for sure. And again, I appreciate all you guys being on the show too. Both James's and Larry. I appreciate you guys jumping in last minute. So kind of to go ahead and switch gears on us. One of the things I was kind of mentioning, this is kind of a topic for discussion that I kind of came up with earlier. I was just kind of brainstorming, thinking of some quick ideas of things to discuss. So in my hands here, I've got my Mosin Nagant, 1940s, whatever it is, rifle. Nicknamed Natasha. I haven't shot it a whole lot, but one of the things that I've thought about lately too was modernization of older firearms, and what your take is on this. Now, the Mosin Nagant right now today still is in abundance. There's I don't know how many millions of them made. I don't know the numbers exactly. So to modify one, in my opinion, isn't like you're taking a pristine classic vintage rifle and destroying it, because there's so many of them. Now that might change down the road. But what is everybody's thoughts on doing things like, for example, with the Mosin Nagant, Archangel makes a polymer stock for it, and not just regular polymer stock. There's other companies that make polymer stocks for them, but one that actually allows you to use magazines. So instead of having the internal box magazine, you can have removable 5-round and 10-round mags. So you're increasing the capability of it. What do you guys think about that? And it doesn't have to be just the Mosin, but any firearm that's vintage, like whether it's adding a different stock, upgrading grips to something that's non-period specific. Maybe doing Cerakote, that kind of stuff to kind of modernize them. What do you all think about that? I don't know if wants to maybe comment on it first, if one of the Jameses or Larry.
I want to hear Larry, since he's a car guy, because I think he might have some opinions on modernizing old things.
Good, tell us.
I don't have, well, Brown Hills grew on, where I worked for all those years, sold gunsmithing tools and supplies, and if you think about it, the whole home gunsmithing industry, starting with World War I and then after World War II, was based on modernizing Mausers and Springfields. And the Jap rifles, they did some of those too. So there were a hell of a lot of Mausers cut up, rebarreled, changed. That was the AR-15 of its day.
Okay.
So, if somebody wants to modernize a Mosin, have at it. I don't know if the gun has the capability to be a 1-minute gun or whatever, if you put a scope on it and and things like that. Mausers all day long, you've got really good capabilities. But if somebody wants to buy a Mosin and start out cheap, what the heck, if you can buy one for, what is it, $90 or $100 now?
No, they like double the price. You know what? When I bought mine, it was about $130. Now you look around, and you start seeing them for like $200.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, price is going up.
Yeah,
I think that's.
You got to pay extra for the rust.
Yeah, you got to pay extra for the rust.
It's antique. It's antique.
Yes.
No, I mentioned earlier like the M1 carbine, and there was a bunch of companies that were putting out stocks, and there's been M1 carbines made from various companies throughout the the years, and it's a fun little gun. It's a nice little round. So upgrading the stock and adding a few rails, a grip, maybe an adjustable stock on it, it was a fun little toy. So stuff like that, I see no problem. But it's not now. If it actually jumped into Normandy, paratrooper cut M1 carbine, and you were to do that, I'd probably slap you, and then slap you again. So, but if it's the 1970s reproduction model,
yeah. Okay.
Good point. Yeah.
I kind of look at.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, James.
I kind of look at it the same way that I look at cars. I like old cars for what they are, and I like new vehicles for what they are. And if I want to take an old car and modernize it a bit to make it go around the track a little bit better, that's what I bought it for. There's a million ARs out there, and when someone comes out and takes something a little bit different and decides to mess around with it, for me that's kind of cool, because it's something you don't see every day, And
Absolutely.
Now, so take for instance the Springfield was at A1. I can't stand the new one. I love old ones. Cannot stand a new one. But then again, the favorite gun I've ever owned was my Mini 14, which I bought with the wood stock from a corrections surplus sale. And I immediately, sorry, Larry, I went to Cabela's, not Brownell, went to Cabela's and got the swing stock, got everything on it, and that turned into my favorite gun I've ever had. And in that sense, you're just accenting what it can already do. Where I think people get into trouble is trying to take something from 1920 and try to mess with it to where they think they can get modern technology results from it. And if you're going to do that, I think you're setting yourself up for disappointment.
Okay, that's a pretty good point. So yeah, I guess when it comes to something that's that old and trying to get modern day results out of it, are you saying taking something as far as like the original barrel and everything, or maybe creating new barrels and new actions and stuff, but still based around the same design?
Well, you can replace enough parts that have the structural shape of the ones you took off.
Mm-hmm.
But the more you do that, you could do that to 100%, and now you've got a modern replica of what you had. So if it's going to stay in old gun, there's got to be some threshold, 30%, 40%, that you can swap out before you're just now having a new gun with some old parts.
Okay. Or a whole new gun that's just based around a design that's old. But you mentioned too a little while ago about new stuff for AR-15s and coming out with like different designs of stuff that's more, I guess, kind of innovative, I guess the way to put it. I don't know. All the little changes and innovations that we see. I mean, this Minnesota rifle, really, it's just this one kind of speaks to design a lot, and technology, I guess, in my sense. But a lot of them do, I guess, too. The California rifle was very much in the styling, but Minnesota touched on the styling, but also got more into the design aspect of it too, which is really kind of cool. So speaking of new stuff, I was going to say with James from I can't speak, High Speed Shooting Stabilizers, you got some new prototype stuff coming out. You're doing some innovations of your own, so tell us about them.
We're just looking at different designs. So these are our prototypes, and I'm trying to get stuff that's very ergonomic, but it's also multifunctional, and you can grip it in a bunch of different ways. And what I like about this is the way that it just, you see how my hand's naturally nice and relaxed, knuckles aren't white, and I can just totally pull this in, and I mean, it really grips and bounces on the rifle. And just going more into ergonomics on the design, plus this little piece right here, you could actually rest and adjust the height and do all kinds of different things. So it's a nice little design, and we've got a whole bunch of tricks up our sleeve. But being a small company, we've got to space things out. But another good point is hooking up with or talking to a bunch of small veteran-owned companies. I just talked to Double Dog Concepts and their side charger. So everybody's got tons of ARs, and people don't want to go back and start rebuilding their guns, but being able to convert your standard AR to a side charger, it's a pretty interesting system. We've been looking at it a lot. Other thing is just talking to different companies that are doing stippling different parts. And it's nice that everybody, I've been putting a lot of mileage on this Habu Falcon 37. And right now the price has come down to where these are in the 70s, 80s. But what's nice about it is you have a charging handle that works just like you would rack your pistol slide. But this little piece right here actually aligns your eye perfectly to your optics. So when you throw it up into your face, you just plant your cheekbone in the same spot, and you're right on your optic.
Pretty cool.
So yeah,
so it acts kind of like a cheek riser, basically.
Oh yeah. So now you have both, on the rifle, and it's a nice little profile. So running the optic, it's nice because you can literally just pull it straight in, and now if you had a side charger, you just rack it like that, and you're done. So there's a lot of different ways that, different innovations and designs on the rifles. It's nice seeing these small companies coming up with, a wrench to throw into the works to get, people to keep, constantly thinking about out of the box core designs.
Cool. So that side charger doesn't it works separately of the Habu? Am I saying that right?
Yeah. You couldn't put both of them on at the same time, but you could always marry the two ideas together. So, I mean, it's just if you like one, there's an option. If you like the other, there's an option. And that's what's fantastic about the platform is there's so many options. You can really easily change out parts. Okay.
And that's kind of a cool point about the cheek riser thing too, because one thing I noticed with this particular setup, and it's nothing against it, just something I just noticed. So with their cheek riser on the Luthe R stock, if you have this fully collapsed, you can't get your full throw out of your charging handle. So that is kind of one thing I kind of realized, and I go, oh, that kind of sucks. But realistically, I'm not putting their product down. I'm just saying it's something to consider. That could be any of these stocks that are collapsible that have a cheek riser built onto it. It's going to block it. And so the one that Habu charging handle that you have there actually kind of solves that problem because it offers you a cheek riser. At the same time, you're not causing any issue with using the charging handle.
Now, this can also mount in two separate positions. It can mount more to the rear, and this is in the forward position. But those lightweight small stocks that you want to use, keep the weight down on the gun, you still got your rubber pad. You can still use your favorite stock, but now you have that significant piece, and you can ride your cheek up and down on this spot if you're shooting at angles. So I've got like some worse spots where I've been putting this bad boy through its spaces. But, I've got to turn it sideways like this. I'm still lined up because I'm still right on that cheek. So it's literally just stopping right on that little cheek, and it's lined right up.
Nice idea.
Yeah, it is a nice idea.
Falcon 37, Habu, Devil Dog Concepts, high-speed shooting stabilizer. A bunch of these little companies are coming up with just new things in the mix, and it's awesome to see.
Yeah, it's cool. Like behind you got your 3D printer there, and that has opened so many doors to allow people to make up their prototypes at home and do their designs and keep the cost low for production for development, I should say. That's pretty amazing. That's kind of like, I know we shared the story before about how you got started with that, where you did 55 different designs all off your 3D printer, trial and error until you got the right design and had it made, had the mold made, I believe, right?
Yeah.
At that point. So that's really cool. So how are things going with the growth of the thing?
Well, we've been on the market now for about 90 days, and like everything, it goes like this. So you just, balance out those lows with the highs, but the big thing is just, getting people to see your company. So we've been getting a lot of feedback from the law enforcement guys who we send parts out to. We've been picking up vendors as we go, and it's a process. Everybody's got to do it. I guess that's why they call it paying your dues. But we're looking forward ahead. We have several pieces ready to go, and as everything starts to expand, we're already looking at the next piece coming out. So
right, which is pretty cool. That I don't know what do you call that piece that you're just developing? I mean, I was still in prototype phase, but
well, this is the Rattler.
What's that?
The Rattler.
Rattler.
Yeah, we're trying to do our little
sticking with the snake theme.
Yeah, might as well,
Right.
And one day I wanted my office to say Cobra Commander on the door.
Nice. Yeah, we kind of grew up with the G.I. Joe stuff, right?
Oh, yeah. But, the other thing about this is these are still lightweight. And this isn't my competition gun. But all these things, I have all this surface area right here to lock on a 2x4, to put in an angle, or to jam into something and just lock the gun up completely. So,
right. It gives you some options to play with when you're, out there shooting stuff.
It'll have fun.
So, yeah, I don't know if you guys got anything else you want to go over, James.
I got a story for you about Ryan.
Go ahead, tell us.
he actually wasn't there when it happened. But so while we were trying to pull his car out of the water, we you had Brian Corey and a retired Marine that I can't remember his name right now. Great guy, and they were pulling stuff out of his car. There was a box of ammo, nylon case for his Oakleys, and some other things, and they put it in the bucket of the tractor I was in, try and keep it dry. Trying to be nice, and had kind of a negligent discharge in that I rotated my body around to see what they were doing, at which my right leg hit the hydraulic lever for the bucket and just slowly just dumped it in the lake.
Oh man! But you guys was it
about trigger and making sure that you don't have a negligent discharge? Well, you can do that with the tractor too. And just stuff just slid in, and
so it's the thought that counts.
But you got it all recovered and everything, right? It wasn't like super deep.
Well, I'm not sure the shock shells will work.
Right.
Some brands immediately die upon moisture. Some can last a while. I've seen Horner pull a shell out of a puddle and shoot it before, so who knows? It might still work.
Well, I heard that one of the matches not too long ago, somebody it was a story related to Ryan, one of Ryan's friends or somebody that had a squid with their shotgun, ended up blowing the barrel apart.
Oh.
Yeah. So then they blamed it on either the moisture or they got wet or something. I don't know if it was raining or just heavy moisture area or what it was. The story I don't remember anymore. But I was like, wow, that sucks that the moisture affected the shotgun shells like that. But I guess it makes sense, right? It's a little bit different
because they're not sealed at all.
What's that?
Especially for slugs, because they're not sealed at all.
Right, and I kind of think it was a slug that might have happened with.
Yeah.
Now you mention that because think about it. Metallic cartridges, your bullets pressed in there, you got a nice tight seal kind of between the two metals. And with the shotgun shell, I mean, I don't think there's really much of a seal to them typically, right?
I don't know what's on the back end. Larry might know.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know if the primers are sealed at all, like military primers, but I can't see why moisture wouldn't run right in the front if
right,
the top over the crimp. I know they're crimp, but I don't think they're that tight.
Well, okay.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of thinking. I didn't think the plastic front end where it's kind of crimped together was evenly sealed. But who knows? I've heard people talking about recently about that issue and saying dripping like candle wax over it, or I forgot what the other idea was, but candle wax is the one that kind of stuck out of my head. Like, hey, that kind of I guess could work. It's a wax.
Silicone would work.
Silicone. I think that was the other one too. Yeah, a little bit of silicone, like.
I just hate to see the barrel after a while.
Right. That's what I was kind of worried about.
Quite a bit of residue in there. And that won't come out with oil because it's wax.
Right. You have to use some pretty good solvent to melt it.
Yeah.
I was thinking the wax might not be so bad, but silicone might be worse. Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. Who knows?
Sounds like
I guess you know what? It sounds like a good idea. In fact, we have a shotgun coming our way very soon to do a test with, and it might be a good one to try some stuff like that. I don't know. We'll have to think about it. I guess we'll kind of start wrapping stuff up here. We got just a little bit after 10 o'clock, and we got a couple minutes late start today. Yeah, if you guys got anything else you want to cover or give a shout out to anybody or plug anything.
Hey, thanks again for having us on here, man. And,
Always.
I've been watching and just checking all your posts, and I really do appreciate that you're putting out for the community. And just remember, tons of awesome new veteran companies are coming up. Give them a try, check them out, and they're marrying their can-do attitude with their problem solving and just throwing a bunch of new ideas out in the market. So.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's and I do like to support veteran-owned companies for sure. That's definite. So that's always good. Keep us up to date on anything that's coming out new anytime. We're welcome to have you on, and you send me a link to something, I'll post it for you. No worries to share it with everybody. So yeah, thank you. And Larry, it was nice to meet you.
Yeah,
it was cool hanging out.
Yeah.
Appreciate you jumping in last minute. Give us a few more people on the panel here, so to speak. And if you got anything else you want to mention or anything you got coming up, and competition or anything, let us know.
I just love all the new product. When I was at Brownells, a lot of what I did was new products.
Oh, that's cool.
you know, it's you get to see so many different things, and it's so amazing how creative the people in the firearms industry are.
Oh
Like
yeah.
with his company, and you'd think that everything for a 1911 would have been done in all the years they've been customizing them, but people still keep coming up with little variations on things. And so I can't see the AR stuff slowing down anytime soon. And somebody's always thinking of a little something new.
Right. I agree with you. The only thing I can see that might be issues is when we start getting different laws passed, possibly, and I hope that doesn't
Sure.
happen. And we got to all kind of pay attention to that in our local areas, and make sure that we voice our concerns and vote accordingly and that kind of stuff to kind of keep those laws from being passed. They keep us from enjoying our Second Amendment right and all that. Otherwise, yeah, I agree. There's going to be a lot of great stuff coming down the road with AR platforms. I mean, there's a lot of talented people and engineers and things that just have all these great concepts and ideas they pull out, and being adaptable. Couple things, not to get off on a big tangent, it's been just a minute here, but things like, in some states where they have magazine restrictions, having a magazine coupler that takes 5 magazines and couples them together so you can pull one out and just rotate it around and add another mag in to help, with that situation, even though they can't run the mag with more than 5 or 10 rounds or whatever the limit is. Bullet buttons. They're designed around the idea that you can adapt them from just having to have a tip of a bullet to release the mag to be able to, if you travel out of California, to be able to install a little tool on it so that you can still release your magazine. Stuff like that. So we look at these things and find ways to adapt to them as best as possible while staying within the laws and all that kind of stuff, and just come up with new, different ways of doing stuff. It's fascinating and fun, and that's one of the things with the 50 states of AR-15. I like to show people if there's something new coming out, like this Hyperfire Hyper Grip, something that's a little different. Just the new stuff that's popping up. So anyway, kind of ramble on a little bit. So James Mason, you got anything else you want to throw out?
Well, due to some recent news, I'm asking everybody I know to call every combat vet they know, and just to make sure they're okay and make sure they have their number. And if you would, make that a monthly event. Put it on your calendar, make your phone remind you, and give them a call.
Just see how they're doing, right?
And that's if anybody's going to give me a Christmas present this year, I want one call a month to every combat veteran you know.
Right on. I like it. I think that's a great idea. So go ahead and wrap this stuff up. One thing I'm going to comment too is to our viewer out there that was commenting along tonight. Thanks for all the questions and comments, and stay in school, kids. And till next time, go out and have some fun shooting.